Welcome back to the show with today's guest, Catherine O'Donovan, who's a renovator, and after quite some time I've been calling you Catherine. I think I can call you Cat.
It's weird, isn't it? It's Cat. It's Cat.
Sorry, Cat.
No, that's all right.
Just before the break, we discussed concept design. We discussed you engaged Stuart Vokes from Owen Vokes and Peters, and going on from our previous episodes, episode 2 we talked about building approvals and development approvals. I know in your case you didn't get a development approval.
Yeah, one of our requirements of our brief was that we were all within the City Council's regulations, because we didn't want to go through those processes. So that was one of our requirements. And we had Brisbane Certifier Group certify our build documents and things like that.
Brisbane certification.
That's what it, yeah.
Actually advertised on this network.
Oh, okay. So, and they had, I think they took not too long either, about 6 weeks for all those approvals. So that was a really minor part for us. Yep. It was, we didn't really pay much attention to it because originally we had said, we want it all to be in. We don't want to have to deal with
just for the benefit of the viewers. Cat's renovation, the tower at the back was less than 8.5 and the setback was 2.5 metres, I think.
We made sure we had enough, we sort of, made sure the neighbour had plenty of space between us and the
and
property.
I think there was an issue there where the neighbours actually thought that the tower was higher, and we got a height survey done and that was all nullified.
That was important to us to make sure that we didn't have to go through any extra bureaucracy or processes,
That's a good point. Now, how long did it take from when you got the concept drawings done? I know you mentioned before you had 3 concept plans and you decided on one. Now, from that point to where you actually went out to tender, how long did that take?
I think that probably took a year. But that's largely to do with the fact that Simon and I are pretty slow. It wasn't really Stuart's fault at all. We did get 3 concepts from Stuart, and then we got one of them costed, and we realized that was probably going to be too much for us. And so we went back to the drawing board with Stuart again and came up with the design that we actually went with. And we got that costed, and we knew that, that was in our ballpark. So that was really probably why it took a long time. And then once we got into that stage, Stuart does a lot of detail work. And you have to make a lot of tiny decisions, which maybe you do on every build, but I really felt that Stuart paid a lot of attention to that. So it took...
I think there was probably about which is quite unusual for a renovation project. There was probably about 100 architectural drawings, and there was a lot of detailing everything, which from my point of view, I enjoy because you can easily price the work.
But it also meant that you had to review and understand it, and Simon and I are not from the building industry, so it took us a long time to get through it all.
So after that, you went out to tender, and just it was a competitive lump sum tender.
So we had 4 bids in. One was low, but didn't. One was from you, and you were in the mid range, and then there was one that was low but couldn't start for another 6 months. There were 2 in your range, and then there was one above that. And really the decision at the end of the day was a value judgment on who we thought we could negotiate and discuss the project. I think when people forget, they think, oh, let's go the cheapest, but you may end up with a more aggressive personality or things like that. Always felt with you that we had a good relationship, or there was a good basis to begin a negotiation with.
I think we were all similar people, quite laid back, casual.
Good value system too. We weren't hammering for every dime, and you understood that about us, but we also expected, a quality project delivered, and I think we all understood where we were coming from.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And the contract that we used was a simple building works contract.
The standard Queensland,
And that's an RAI, and that was administered by Stuart?
Stuart, yes. We made sure that he project managed because we're time poor, and I don't know anything about building, so I didn't want to start. to know anything about building.
No, that's all right.
I think it's better, you know, when you're committing these kind of amounts of capital to things that you pay for expertise in those areas to manage it through.
And we have been saying that throughout the series there, that you should use an architect to like administer the contract, because it is a contract essentially. And if you try and administer it yourself where you're not legally
and I think it's also I watched my friend project manage her job, and it's a huge commitment. It's exhausting, and I just think, look, I'm not the type of person that would have done that well, I don't think. So I knew that about myself.
And how long, we know how long it took, just can you remind?
It was a year build. I think we originally planned for nine months, wasn't it? But we got a lot of rain in January, so there was a lot of rain delay. And then things just really slowed down at the end,
we'll talk about that next segment. And there weren't many changes, but the changes that were the kitchen area that changed a bit.
We did make a few changes as the build went, but that was things that were thrown up because of the structure of the building or because of the way we wanted to take advantage of things that were presented to us. And I think you suggested a few things along the way that would have worked better, and we took them up.
And it was things like initially that in the existing part of the house, that hallway that had just a plasterboard wall.
That's right. And Stuart changed that and put a beautifully designed, unique wall in there.
I think that made that area.
Yeah, it did, didn't it? And the living room is a very special space because of that, and interesting to look at. And then there was also the bricks on the outside in the garden.
Yep.
And that was something we hadn't decided, but we decided once we were in the build. There are some things that you can't really make decisions on until you're in the build, you know, I think.
And in terms, we've briefly touched on it. We explained the process for managing the contract, and that was Stuart was the one that was administrator of the contract.
And we had a weekly meeting.
Yep.
And with Stuart and yourself or Nick, like your foreman, was that a good description? And we would discuss all the issues of that week and any decisions that had to be made, or any compromises, or things that were out of scope of the contract, or things like that. So, and actually we did put underneath the house some storage stuff that was out of scope, you know, so.
But all in all, it went well, and we'll take a break, because what we want to do is, you know, evaluate what things we could have done better and what things went wrong, and some tips for the audience. We'll take a break and we'll be right back.